What's up, Heritage? Come on. Give your neighbor a high five like you're excited to be in church today. Turn to your second choice and say, it's good to see you. Man, guys, it is so good to be with you this morning. If you don't know who I am, my name is Matt Mummert. I am the Connections Pastor here at Heritage Church. Yeah, I love it. And guys, I am so happy to be with you today. If I have not met you yet, especially if this is your first time here, come see me at the Connect Room right down here to your left right after service. I would love to be able to shake your hand if this is your first time, put a gift in your hand, and just welcome you to our church properly, because honestly, for all of you, I am so glad that you are here. For those joining us online today, thank you for being with us, because today we are in week 2 of our Unhurried series. We are talking about what it means to live an unhurried life and allowing the love, the grace, and the hope of Christ to wash over us. And today I want to talk to you about the idea of living an unhurried life through peace. Through peace. Because I think peace is something that we all try to reach for at some point in our life. You know, we just bought our first Minnesota house, my wife and I, and it was a lot to get into it. It was a struggle. It was week after week after week of looking at multiple houses. That's what our weekends were spent doing, was looking for a house to buy. We finally bought one, and we started this what seemed like a never-ending process to move in, because we bought the house and it needed to be cleaned. We ended up ripping carpets out and having carpets replaced. I had to raise an entire floor up and make it level with the house. Like, the to-do list just became so long as soon as we signed the papers. And it just seemed like it was never ending. And we began to do the moving process then. And that in itself was a struggle, because we were loading up our rental house that we just unpacked, loading it back up, trailer load after trailer load, over to the new house. And through all of this, I had this idea in my mind that when it's all done, I'll be able to kick back and rest. I had a couple priorities. My priority was, 1, get the bed put together, and 2, get the living room set up, because I wanted to kick my feet back with a nice cold soda and watch some TV and enjoy our new house. This was the image that I created for myself. Did it happen? Of course not, because that's not the way life works. The to-do list got even longer once we got in the house. We started to try to figure out what color we want to paint our living room, and I think we finally decided on one after about a month and a half. But we figured out we're not beige people, but if you look at our living room right now, there are paint swatches everywhere that we have painted. It was a disaster. We have to paint the nursery. We have to get that ready to go. We have little items to fix, like a leaky faucet, little things like that. The to-do list seemed to get so much longer after we moved in, but I wanted that also important moment of peace. I have this image in my head. My dad was up here not too long ago, and when he came to visit, I told him, hey, Dad, we still got to do grocery shopping. Would you like to go with us? He's like, if it's okay with you, I'm just going to take a nap. I'm like, sure, take a nap. That's fine. And I thought about it. I'm like, that sounds awesome. When my daughter gets here in December, I am looking forward to that also important dad nap. You know, the one where you come home on a Sunday after church, you're exhausted from church, you're exhausted from the week, you want that nap, so you click on, the Bears or the Cowboys, a game that you really don't care to watch, and you sit there with a cup of coffee in one hand, your daughter laying in the other arm, and you just conk out on the couch, just mouth hanging open, it's the most unsightly thing, but it's this moment of peace that I've created in my head, because I think there's nothing more peaceful than that. But will I ever get that moment? No, because the to-do list continues to grow. Once she gets here, there's going to be so many more things on that list, but it's this continuous pursuit of that moment of peace. This is what our unhurried lives tend to be. We continuously chase this moment. When I was in college, we set checkpoints for ourselves. If I could get past this 20-page paper, things will begin to lighten up. If I could get past midterms, things will begin to lighten up. If I could just get past this one thing, my schedule's going to free up. I'm going to feel so much better. I thought that would end when I left college, and I was wrong. Because now it's, if I can just move into the house, things will begin to lighten up. If I could just finish this sermon, finish today, my work week is going to lighten up. If our daughter will just get here, then things will lighten up. But that's not the way life works. But we continuously set these checkpoints for ourselves that when we get to the end of our list, when everything is checked off, then we'll find that moment of peace. Our hurried lives are this endless pursuit of peace. Our hurried lives are an endless pursuit of peace. I'm going to have Roman come up to the stage and help me out here real quick. And Roman, I'm going to hand you this bucket. Now, I know Roman. Look at Roman. He's a stocky guy. You know, if we were to go into an arm wrestling contest, he would beat me. All right, stop showing off. He would destroy me in an arm wrestling contest. But, you know, Roman, I'm going to hand you this bucket. And this bucket, it's light. It's easy to handle. This bucket represents our life. Just go ahead and hold that out to your side there. That bucket represents our life. It's lightweight. It's easy to handle. It's got nothing going on. It's simplistic. But we know that's not reality. So let's add some life to it. We were talking about the house just a minute ago, so let's talk about the house. We have laundry that needs to be done. We have groceries that need to be done. The house needs to be clean. The lawn needs to be mowed. This is Minnesota after all, so the next week you have to shovel, and then you have to shovel, and then you have to shovel, and a little bit more shoveling. Now, this once simplistic life is starting to get a little bit of weight to it. But that's just at home, and that's not even everything. But then we start to have kids, and you know, kids, they like to do things. They like to have play dates. They like to go to baseball. Some of them, I hope my daughter would love to do mountain biking with me. You know, we got that going on. But then you have other things. You have work. We have to finish our reports. We have to get our budget in order. We have to deal with the finances. And it's starting to weigh a little bit more. But you struggling there, Roman? Good, keep holding it. But, you know, thank God we have a vacation coming up. So we're going to take a rock out. But we have to figure out a hotel, right? And then, are we going to fly or are we going to drive? Where are we going to eat? What are the kids going to do to entertain themselves? And this once simplistic life is now becoming harder and harder to handle. And you can see he's starting to shake a little bit. Keep holding it. But this is our life. We loaded up with so much stuff thinking this is not that much more. I can handle it. I can do it. But the more we load in, the more we begin to struggle. And if you notice, he's starting to get like this curve to his back. And we think, I got this. I can handle it. Meanwhile, we're struggling to keep up this life. Go ahead, set it down, Roman. Give him a hand, guys. The reality is this is probably only 6 or 7 pounds. But I want you to take note of that. 6 or 7 pounds is not heavy when you go to pick it up. But the longer you hold it, the longer you think, I can keep this up, the longer we keep living this life, the more we begin to struggle. And it begins to weigh on us. It begins to press us. And the more this once unhurried life becomes hurried. And our hurried life is this endless pursuit of peace. We struggle with it. But you know, we turn to this psalm. Psalms 23, one of the most probably well-known psalms in all the Bible. And if you've heard it before, I encourage you, I used to tell my students this, don't ruin the end of the story for yourself. We get to these verses before, and the pastor has maybe talked about them, maybe we're familiar with them, but I encourage you, don't ruin the end of the story. Listen for something new today. Listen for what God wants to do in your heart today. And if you can do this for me without falling asleep, I encourage you to close your eyes, because I'm going to read this entire psalm to you. It's 6 verses, and I just want you to just listen. It's stop taking notes for a minute and just listen. If you can't close your eyes without falling asleep, keep them open, but just listen. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures, and he leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right path for his name's sake. Even though I walk in the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies, and you anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Okay, go ahead and open your eyes. If your neighbor fell asleep, give him a nice swift punch to the shoulder. No, don't really, I'm kidding. It's almost hard to even listen to that verse and not feel this peace begin to wash over you. The reality is David was probably in his later years of life at this point. He's already in his kingship. And he's writing this as he reflects on his time as a shepherd. And you can almost see the light bulb come on in David's mind. He's thinking about what the Lord is like, and he's like, I remember being a shepherd. And that's where I see the Lord in my life, is he is our shepherd. And he starts this analogy, and it's not a new analogy, the Lord is our shepherd. This is actually quite common in the Old Testament. And it says in Isaiah 40, verse 11, he tends his flocks like a shepherd. He gathers the lambs in his arms, and he carries them close to his heart. He gently leads those who have young. I love this analogy of the Lord because it shows the provisions of God. It shows the protection of God. It shows him just almost wrapping his arms around us in the darkest situation. He's there, he's present. And it's hard to feel this anxious when you hear this. But then he says something that still to this day confuses me. I lack nothing. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. Some verses will say, I shall not want, or I shall not be in want. And I think this is kind of an odd sentence, because we want all the time. We want continuously. We just got blessed with a beautiful new Oklahoma Joe smoker for our house. I'm from Kansas City. I love barbecue, but I like to make it myself. I like the craft behind it. So we got this beautiful new smoker, and I went straight to Amazon. And I'm like, I want a fireproof mat below it so we don't get grease or oil on the deck. I want a nice grill cover to keep it protected so it doesn't get rusty. I want new probes so I can test the temperatures of different areas of the grill and the meat and everything. I want. Some of you are thinking, I want lunch. I want a good cup of coffee. I want a nap. How many of you would not give for a nap right now? I mean, come on, let's be honest about it. We're tired. We want all the time. So I can't imagine David reflecting on his time as a shepherd, sitting out in this field thinking, man, I have everything. No, in the field, he's probably sitting there thinking, man, I would give for a blanket right now. He's probably cold and damp. He probably wants a good cup of coffee, David, he didn't sit there in the field thinking, I want. It is confusing to me. But here he is in his later years, and he reflects back, and I'm sure he wanted something in that field. But he thinks back and thinks, but I didn't need anything. I didn't need anything. I think about all these things that I want, and I reflect on this, and I wonder, but what is actually needed? If you were here a couple weeks ago, you heard my wife talking about Martha, and it was very similar. What is actually important? David, he looks back on his life and he reflects on this. And he thinks, the Lord gave me everything. But he doesn't stop there. He continues on with it. He says, he makes me lie down in green pastures. He makes me lie down in green pastures. I think about this. Think about what would make a sheep lie down in a green pasture. Because when the sheep went to green pastures, these were seasonal things. One would dry up, so the the shepherds would take the sheep to a new pasture that was being well watered, maybe with a spring rain or something, where it was green, where it was lush, where it was flowing. This to a sheep was like us walking into Pizza Ranch after church. And I don't know about you, but I'm not going to Pizza Ranch to lie down. Maybe when it's all done, but not at first. Because I gotta get the food. Like, I'm excited about it. You know, my first plate is salad. Not because I actually want it, because I feel like I should eat it. So my first plate's salad, but then my second plate, that's the fried chicken, the mashed potatoes, the corn on the cob. Like, that's my second plate. And then my third plate is pizza, okay? But then the fourth plate is cactus bread. The fifth plate is cactus bread. The sixth plate is cactus bread. You see where this is going. And when I've finally had my fill of cactus bread, when I'm about to bust at the seam, only then will I lie down, because I need a nap. But this is what the sheep did. They walked to a green pasture. They saw an all-you-can-eat buffet. But what makes the sheep lie down in it? When they have been well fed. When they have had their fill, when they had what they needed. We downplay this being well fed thing, but the reality is many of us, we came in today hungry. We came in today looking for God to do something in our life. We came in ready. In John 6:35 it says, "Then Jesus declared, 'I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry. Whoever believes in me will never be thirsty.'" Many of us came in looking for that substance we so desperately need. We came in hungry, waiting on God, but he doesn't stop there. David continues, "He leads me beside quiet waters." The shepherd, he would lead the sheep to these pastures, these ponds, these streams, and he would look intently at the water before allowing the sheep to approach. Because he was looking for predators. He was looking for crocodiles or something underneath the water that might be a threat to the sheep. But the quiet waters meant that there was no threat present. And he would allow the sheep to drink. And as I was studying for this, I realized something. I realized that every land animal needs to do one very important thing before they can take a drink. They need to bow. Take a look at this image up on the screen here. You look at the ducks, so small and innocent, and they bow to get that drink. We go to the sheep, and the sheep, they bow. You go to the king of the jungle, the lion, and he's bowing. You go to the tallest animal, the giraffe, and he's bowing. Even the elephant with its trunk needs to drop its head before it can get a drink. And I think about this, we came in so thirsty. We came in so ready for the Lord to do something, but how many of us have left without that drink? How many weeks have you come in waiting for God to do something incredible, waiting to hear his voice, waiting to feel a move of his spirit, but you leave almost disappointed because you didn't get what you came for? I can't count how many times I've been in my devotions and I think, God, today you're going to do something awesome. God, today your spirit's going to move. God, today you're going to answer prayers. And I go in my devotions and I pray and I read and I do all these things. But in the back of my mind, I have the running to-do list of what needs to get done in my hurried life. What it actually needs to be accomplished, because when I get done praying, I got to get back to work. I got to finish writing the message. I got to respond to emails. We got to figure out what color we're going to paint the house. We got to do all of these different things. We left work just the other day, and my wife, she says, so I started to work on a list of things that we need to do before the baby comes. I'm like, no, I don't want any more. She's like, no, but this is important. No! When will the list stop? But we come in wanting God to do something so great, but we are still focused on the list and the task at hand, and we live this life so focused, when God is just saying, if you just lay it down, if you just give it up for 10 minutes, I will do something you cannot imagine. But we go into our devotions not willing to bow, not willing to lay it down at the feet of the Lord. We come in carrying it on our minds, thinking, this is what I need to get done today. And then devotions, this time with God, this time that we really need, it becomes just another box to check off. It's another item on our to-do list. But I want you to understand this. That's not the mindset of David here. The mindset of David is that the Lord has already taken care of this. Experiencing peace, it tames the wants in our life. Experiencing peace, it tames the wants in our lives. We want all the time. We want our list to be smaller. We want our list to be finished. We want these tasks, these jobs, these things to be done. I want a big, beautiful house that's freshly painted and we have all the storage space we need. I want. But when we experience the peace of God, all those wants get boiled down to, I have everything I need. Because we're willing to bow and lay it before the feet of the Lord. It continues on, even though I walk in the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. We look at the protection now of this shepherd who's over us. And it says, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Understand this, David, he's looking back at this time and he thinks through some honestly pretty uncomfortable situations as he's leading these sheep around what I imagine is at night in the dark. You know, they didn't have the lights like we do. I mean, it was dark out there. And he's leading these sheep around. I'm sure he kind of got that chill down his spine when he heard a lion or a bear off in the distance. So the shepherd, he would grab his rod, and the rod, it was really like that of a club. And this is the equivalent to you and I facing a lion or a bear with like a baseball bat. Not really something that I want to do anytime soon. But this is the bravery we see from our shepherd. He's protecting us. And then he goes to the staff. You know, I grew up in church and I would watch the Christmas productions when the shepherds would walk up with their staff and they would like lean on it and prop themselves up. I thought that's what the staff was for. I thought it was just like a little, like a prop tool for the shepherd. But that's not what it's for. It was actually quite important for them because they would use this staff, they would use the end of it to almost poke and prod the sheep, to guide them where they need to go, to keep them with the herd, to take them to pastures, to waters. They would guide the sheep to these important resources with this staff. And then there's the hook. And I found this fascinating when I figured out what the hook actually was. It wasn't just a handle for the shepherds. No, the hook had a purpose. It was shaped just perfectly to redirect the sheep's attention. You see, when sheep began to feed, they would put their heads down, they would bury it in the grass, and they would just begin to walk and feed at their leisure. And when their heads were buried in the tall grass, this is where you start to get the lost sheep who kind of wanders off. So they would use this hook to wrap the sheep around the neck just so gently and lift its head. So when it's lifted its head, it realized, I'm not with the herd, I'm not where I'm supposed to be, I need to go back. And I think, how many of us live our lives that way? We live our lives with our heads down. We live our lives with our heads buried in the grass, thinking, this is the task that I need to do. These are the jobs that I need to get done. I'll go back to the herd when I'm finished. I'll go back to the herd when I finish the list. I'll go back when I'm done. But that's not the job of the shepherd. The job of the shepherd is to lift our heads, to remind us where we belong. We live our lives so buried in our to-do list, we're taking one step at a time trying to figure out what comes next. And it seems like this never-ending thing. We work and we work and we work just to find that moment of peace. I'll go back to church when all the jobs are done. I'll go back when I get the projects and I have a moment. If you're looking for the moment, you're never going to find it. Listen to me. I came in a couple of weeks ago, and it was a Tuesday. And I came in knowing that I needed something, but I didn't know what. So I just decided, I came in, I'm like, I'm just going to go walk. I'm just going to walk. I don't know what I need. I need to do a lot, but I don't know what I need. So I'm just going to walk. I had no time frame. I had no agenda. I had nothing planned. I put in my AirPods, I left church, and I just began to walk. I went, 3 or 4 miles. I don't actually know how long I went. I didn't take a Bible. I didn't plan anything. And as I was walking, I just began to look up. And I thought to myself, I'm in Brainerd, Minnesota right now. Like, this is wild. A year ago, I didn't even know Brainerd existed. I'm in Brainerd, Minnesota. In fact, a year ago, I was applying for a church down in Georgia. The thought that now, a year later, my wife and I are pastors in Brainerd was crazy to me. But I'm looking around thinking, this is awesome. I have never seen the sun so bright. I have never seen trees so green. I have never felt temperatures so comfortable. And I just begin to walk. I'm sure that will change when winter hits, but we'll deal with that then. But I began to look up and I just began to praise God, saying, thank you. Thank you for calling me here. Thank you for not just letting me survive, but letting me live, letting me have a life. Like, this is a blessing. Do you acknowledge that? Like, we are so blessed. I said at the beginning of the message, I'm glad you're here because it's a blessing to be here. To be surrounded by people who love you, people who care about you, this is great. And I thought, I'm so blessed, not just to be in Brainerd, but to be in the career that I have. To be a pastor, and not just a pastor, but a pastor on a staff who cares about how I do, who cares about my success, who wants to see me grow. It is a blessing to be here. And all of this came up just because for one moment of the day, I decided to lift my head. Lift it up out of the emails, lift it up out of the sermon prep, lift it up out of the work that I had to get done. Just lift my head and spend a moment with God. Some of you came in exhausted today, just absolutely burnt out, tired, struggling. I've been there. And God's just saying, just look to me. Just look up and remember why you're here. Remember what I've done for you. In this analogy of the shepherd, it begins to shift now, and it says, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Imagine this from David's perspective now. This is years later. He's at the end of his kingship. He looks back and he thinks about the enemies that he has faced. And quite frankly, David has faced enemies that you and I will probably never face. He faced a 9'9" giant. Like, just imagine that for a minute. 9 feet tall, 9 inches. That is big. The head of his spear was 15 pounds. This was the enemy that David faced. He faced an army of 10,000 people. He ran from Saul and all of his guards in the pursuit of his life. David had enemies, but he still writes this sentence, you prepare a table before me in their presence. David, he looks back over these battles that he's faced, over these battles that he's overcome, and he thinks, I was never really at risk. Because the Lord already had that in his hands. The Lord already took care of all of these things. He's already done it. In the moment, it seems so scary, but the Lord already had the victory. And I think about David sitting there in this peace that comes over his mind as he imagines this vast table, as he sits there with the Lord, peering through the window and seeing his enemies out there, and he's just, I'm at peace here. Experiencing peace gives you perspective. Experiencing peace gives you perspective. We may not face a 9'9" giant, but we still have giants in our lives. Some of us came in with a mountain of debt. That's a giant for you. Some of us came in with addiction. That's a giant for you. The reality is we don't face giants quite the same way that David did, but we still have enemies in our lives. And I want you to think about that for a moment. The Lord has prepared this table for you in their presence. It's already done. It's already dealt with. The victory is already had. This is the power of God. Experiencing peace gives you perspective. And finally, it ends with this thought: surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I love the way this ends because David, he relates living in the house of the Lord to overwhelming goodness, love. Some versions will say mercy. David relates this to living in the house of the Lord, and I want you to take note. It doesn't just have to be a long-term thing. David's not just talking about eternity in heaven, but that's part of it. But look around you. You're in the house of the Lord right now. And I'm not talking about Heritage Church. I'm not talking about this building. No, I'm talking about the people that surround you. When we come together, we make up the church, and the church is the house of the Lord. Some of you came in today saying, Matt, everything you're saying is great, but my giant is too big. My enemies are too strong. No one here can acknowledge what I'm going through. You're wrong. Because I'm willing to bet there's someone else in this room who has struggled in something very similar to you. I think back, and I came in March, and one day I just came in and I was screaming at God. Because I was so angry. My wife and I, we've suffered 2 miscarriages, one right after we moved out here. And I came in bitter, upset, angry, because we have been praying for so long to have a child of our own. We have been waiting for it. And I came in yelling at God, saying, God, why did you do it again? God, why would you do this again? And I came in so upset, not understanding the plan of God. And 2 weeks later, I had a Connect card come across my desk. I've suffered 2 miscarriages and I don't know what to do. You're telling me that God has not put you here for a reason? There's a reason that you are here. He puts you in the house of the Lord so you can experience this goodness, this love, this mercy, this peace. Experiencing peace, it eliminates the hurry of our life. When we get to the end of it all, David, he looks back and he reflects on his life as a shepherd. And you can almost see the light bulb come on. That this is where the Lord showed up in my life. And it's amazing to think. You see, David, he went through some battles in his We go through battles in our lives. And we look for this peace. We look for this moment of rest when we get done with the checklist. When everything gets done, when we've marked all the boxes, then we can find that all so important moment of peace. Then we can find that moment of rest, but not until the list is done. But I want you to understand something. You're not going to find peace at the end of the list. You're not going to find it when all the boxes have been checked. That's not where you find peace. You only find peace in His presence. The pursuit of peace can only end in His presence. You came in today, I'm sure many of you like me, thinking, what am I going to do when I leave church today? What's on the list for today to accomplish? And only when that list is done can I find my rest. Only when that list is accomplished will I experience an unhurried life. An unhurried life is not the end of the list. An unhurried life is in His presence. When you let this peace wash over you. If you have your Connect card, go ahead and take it out. We got 4 next steps for you, and before you just start checking them off, I want you to listen. The first one, today for the first time, I am committing my life to Christ. Don't check this yet, because this is a decision that needs to be made. I'm not making it for you. Another pastor will not make it for you. I don't want the emotion to make it for you. I want you to make this commitment only if you mean it. But some of you have not experienced that peace that I'm talking about yet. Some of you have not experienced what it means to lay your life down at the foot of the Father. And today is your day to make that decision. It's not a one-time thing. It's like not saying I'm doing this today and tomorrow I'm going back. It means I'm willing to change. I want to change my life to feel the peace of God. Only if you're serious about that commitment, check that first box. Number 2, this week I will commit to taking one walk alone with God. If you can't walk, that's fine. Just find somewhere that you can go without distraction. But take one walk with no distraction, with no agenda. Leave your prayer list at home and just go for one walk to be surrounded by the Lord's presence. Number 3, this week I will commit to reading Psalms 23 before I start my day. It's 6 verses. I read it in 30 seconds at the start of the service. This week, commit to reading Psalms 23 every day before you start your day. If you have a family, gather them around the kitchen table. Read it together as a family. If you're by yourself, read it in your car before you go to work. Just take 30 seconds to read this, not as a checklist item, but because you want to experience the peace of God, and I challenge you to see how it will change your day. I challenge you to see how it will change your perspective, because I'm willing to bet that God's going to show up. And lastly, number 4, I will go to the Heritage app and sign up for a small group happening this fall. The house of the Lord is not just an eternity. The house of the Lord is here right now. As we join together as a church to hear His word, as we join together to pray, as we join together to worship, we are in the house of the Lord. If you're out there and you're saying, Matt, no one understands what I've gone through. Nobody wants to walk with me. I do. I do. I was praising God the other day, not just because He called me to Brainerd, but because I get to walk with His people. I get to be there with them. If you go through our groups list and you're not sure which one fits you, come find me, because I want to walk with you. I'm going to ask our prayer team to come down to the front. Any one of these coming down, they want to walk with you. You see, you're not here by accident. You're here because the shepherd has led you. And we get to be together as the house of the Lord today. I'm going to ask you to stand to your feet as I close in prayer. And when you leave, please do not leave looking for the checklist. But take just a moment to dwell in His presence. And when the Lord is finished with you, you are free. But church, experience that freedom this week. Experience what He's done, because He's done incredible things. Let's pray. Father, all the glory, all the honor, and all the praise to your name today for what you've done in this place for each and every one of these that you've brought. Lord, we just give you thanks. And God, I pray for those who came in struggling this week with a hurried life, myself included. And Lord, I pray that your peace will show up in ways that we never once thought possible. God, I pray that today you break chains. I pray that today we find freedom in your name. Father, you are good. You are love. You are peace. In your name, amen.